So here's my favorite slide. This is about shortlists. You should be caring about shortlists because they are shrinking. Just in 1 year, we've gone from 4 to 7 products to the majority of companies only shortlisting 1 to 3. And so how do you stand out? How do you get to be the top 3 on the list? Especially when you're in an early nascent category, very crowded category. So if you're not on the top 3, then you need to think about, how do I start to leverage buyer intent signals and signals out in the market to intercept those companies that are just going to go to the top 3 shortlists? So you're going to have to stand out. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to focus more in on your target market and really know your value proposition for them and be creative.
Please welcome Sydney Sloan, CMO at G2.
All right. As they mentioned, my name is Sydney Sloan. I'm the new CMO at G2. And I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes with you talking about some of the things that we're seeing in the changing buyer landscape. So I always want to start with a little bit of audience participation. Okay, so in the last 7 days, have you made a buying decision, a recipe decision, a where to go for dinner decision without using reviews or recommendations? Maybe actually raise your hand if you have, because then nobody. Have you in the last 7 days made a decision based on reviews or recommendations? I can't imagine. I know that, let's see, I don't think I've ever bought something on Amazon without reading the reviews. And when you think about how buying has changed, just in general, I would say that software buying behavior has changed. It's not is changing, it has changed. And we recently at G2 did our annual buyer behavior report. So I'm going to share some insights with you and 3 key takeaways and some recommendations of what you can think about as we enter into this new phase of buying. So the first area is that the promise of AI is dictating purchasing behavior. And it's good news because people want to buy it and people are confident in buying it. The second insight is that the ability to win these limited software budgets, so even though more people are spending, access to decision makers, access to that budget is harder than ever before. I'll probably make a lot of the salespeople in the room feel better to just know you're not alone, okay? And then the third very interesting and important piece is that the expectation of ROI is mismatched. People want to see ROI right away, and they're not seeing it fast enough. And with the challenge that we're all facing on not only capturing new customers, but keeping them as customers, so the dreaded churn challenge that many of us are facing is really about how to make sure that customers are realizing ROI faster than ever before. So we're going to explore these 3 areas. All right, so let's talk about the promise of AI. The good news, this is the good news in the presentation. More people are going to be buying software in 2025 than they did in 2024. A lot more people. Only 6% say that they're actually going to be buying less than they did this year. So we should feel really good about that. And what's driving that purchasing behavior is the promise of AI. So people are already purchasing. Over half the respondents, 56%, say they already have purchased AI. But even better, the confidence that they feel in the stage that AI technologies are now are making them even more likely to buy AI technology. Now, this could be AI-based platforms. It could be AI capabilities and features in existing products. But the advice to the go-to-market teams is if you're not yet, which I can't imagine, but if you're not yet leading with AI in your story, you better figure out how to do that because that's what people are looking for. All right. And McKinsey did this study. So of all the AI categories, what is really getting the most traction in the market? And the first movers here are the sales and marketing purchasers. Second movers are engineering. And third are kind of customer success and operations, all seeing very good numbers. So you should be happy if you're in these categories. But it also means there's lots of competition, and it means you need to start thinking about how you stand out. Sales teams are early adopters. I think a lot of us have seen the use of sales-assisted messaging, sales AI summaries and calls. So 81% of sales teams are already using some kind of AI And 75% of these buyers are looking for AI-powered technology. So let's explore a little bit of what are they looking for in terms of sales productivity. We know a lot of time for salespeople is not actually spent selling. I think the slide says 30%, if I remember correctly. And so how do we take those tasks that are done in the non-productive time and make them more productive? I mentioned some of the things already, AI summaries, but we're also seeing them prepare better, using AI tools to research companies and what their customers care about, using AI to augment some of the outreach activities that customers are implementing. I talked about the AI summaries. So really creative uses of AI. And I think the one that's the heated debate right now is, will SDRs have a life in AI? And having been the SalesLoft CMO for 4 years, I hope this doesn't ring true, just because I have a particular affection for SDRs and the role that they play. But you'll see some of the leading companies here. These are the top 5 performing companies in the Copilot arena today. And you see it's an added feature to the platforms that they offer. And so really thinking about what role can AI play and what role do SDRs still play? And I still believe as a buyer that people want to talk to people, especially for larger like ASPs. So you're not going to make a $50,000 purchasing decision without talking to somebody. And again, it's maybe a way to stand out. So if everybody moves over to AI-based copilots, and then all of a sudden you get a human talking to you, I can tell you there's an SDR in the room that reached me using a video-based introduction email, and it totally worked. So I think you still have to think about that balance. And I don't see that the copilots are going to replace SDRs, but it may reduce the number of SDRs you have in your team over time. Second largest buyers are marketing. And so what we see here is that even more marketers are testing AI tools than ever before. There's been a lot of discussion in the CMO communities that I'm in, and many of them are already planning to integrate it into their workflows, into their teams this year. On24 surveyed 520 marketers and found that 7 times companies who use AI in their marketing teams have a 7x higher lift in performance. So again, if you're not yet implementing AI in a meaningful way, I'm not just talking about testing it, in a meaningful way in your marketing teams, you should make that a requirement for your teams going into 2025 next year in your planning. So what are they using it for? Promotional content, this is like ads, ad building, copywriting, great way to take one piece of content and mix it up and leverage it and use it to test. It's also being used for idea starters for content teams. I know I'm pushing my team to really think about using it in a more meaningful way, but there's still some hesitation in the way that the AI tools write. And so they still want it to be in our tone and voice, but I see a lot of advancements in this area. Really interesting work on audience segmentation, research, ICP. When you feed the AI algorithms your data and get it to refine ICP in the purchasing process. So if you're not thinking about that, that's another great place to apply the AI. And then also like analytics and business metrics and things like that. The one thing about the market for these marketing AI assisted tools is it's getting pretty crowded. So 5 years ago, just back in 2019, there were only 20 companies on this grid. There's 488 now. 488. That's a lot of technologies to choose from. And I just want to give a shout out to Grammarly for remaining at the top for a very long time. And I love the ads that they've been doing and really the way that they've continued to advance it, to integrate it into the way that we work. And they've continued to do a good job. Notion as well. I've tested out the Notion capabilities. They're great. So really think about this complexity now of all these AI capabilities, all these AI tools. And we're going to lead into the second challenge. The ability to sell, capturing these limited budgets in these crowded marketplaces. So here's my favorite slide buried somewhere in the middle of 20 minutes. Okay. This is about shortlists. You should be caring about shortlists because they are shrinking. Just in 1 year, We've gone from 4 to 7 products to the majority of companies only shortlisting 1 to 3. See, that's a shorter shortlist for sure. And so how do you stand out? How do you get to be the top 3 on the list? Especially when you're in an early nascent category, very crowded category. So if you're not on the top 3, then you need to think about, how do I start to leverage buyer intent signals and signals out in the market to intercept those companies that are just going to go to the top 3 shortlist? So you're going to have to stand out. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to focus more in on your target market and really know your value proposition for them and be creative. The other piece on the buying side is that, and this is the sales teams, you can feel at least a little kumbaya in that it's getting harder. The amount of time, this is year on year, for a $20,000 ASP, the buying time increased 41%. 41%. So now you think of the productivity of your sales and marketing teams, and now your buying process just extended 41%. So how are you taking control of the buying process? How are you pushing those customers to get into POCs earlier than they ever have? How do you manage more sales cycles if you're not increasing your win rates? Or maybe you need to be able to focus more in on higher quality deals and getting customers out in the discovery process because the buying process is taking longer and the C-suite's involved. Huge increase here. C-suite involvement in purchasing decisions is up 14% year on year. IT teams no longer can sign the check without somebody, likely the CFO, having a look at it. Or maybe they're using one of these outsourced buying platforms as well that are becoming more and more popular. Vendor, Tropics, those folks. And so what do you do about that? Now you've got more people in your persona list in your buying process that you have to think about. And I'm going to give a shout out to my friends over at 6 Sense. I was at a conference they were running a couple weeks ago, and they talked about how they were automating the inclusion of the CFO. And I just have to say, it's a cruel world. It's pretty darn funny. So including the CFO in stage 2 of the buying process. So if you're running MedPick or Medic and you're looking for the economic buyer, you're going to be wanting to do that in the early stages of the sales process and running targeted ads, likely on LinkedIn, to the economic buyer. You've got to engage them in the cycle. You've got to be comfortable getting your sales teams in front of them or doing CFO to CFO introductions. You're going to have to figure out how to get to the economic buyer, which is harder. Probably another reason why the sales cycles are longer. So it's harder. Good news is more people are spending. They're spending on AI. Not so great news. It's taking longer. More people involved in the buying process. Last piece here. And when you're thinking about as a CFO or CEO or your go-to-market teams, it's about time to value. So the big aha here is that buyer expectations are not being met. 78% of buyers want to see ROI within the first 6 months of purchase. Yet only 44% are actually seeing it. That's a big gap. And the worst part about this is if you don't deliver on your sales promise of delivering value, you've just radically increased the possibility of that customer churning. So what are you going to do? And it's for the team 1 that was like AI products, the challenge is even harder because 67% of them expect that AI is going to deliver a faster result than a non-AI product. So here's what I would encourage folks to think about. How do you work with your product teams to get customers to value faster? That onboarding process that used to occur where sales would sell and then you'd hand it over to CSM team and they do the implementation and planning and the buyer is paying for software for 3 months before the software is actually running, that can't happen anymore. You need to be thinking about, how do I get my customers in the product during the buying cycle? How do we run programs like a PLG motion that onboards them to that first point of value as fast as possible? And if your product development teams can't build it, then use one of these digital adoption platforms to drive the users to the right places to get them to success and track it. So if the expectations that you're setting for the customer is they'll get to value in a month, then you should have milestones in the product adoption, mix panel, whatever you're using, to be able to see where they are in that adoption. And if they're not, then get more people involved. And the one thing that I've been telling every G2 customer is that if you haven't yet integrated G2 reviews with one of these digital adoption platforms, do it right now because it gets your reviews to be always on. That's our time to value promise. And so how do I make sure that my customers are doing that? So they're seeing that value right away, not waiting to run a review campaign or running an outreach campaign with our teams. Really think about the right paths in that onboarding process, understand what value is, and then make sure the customer knows that they've reached that milestone. So what automation communications could you put in place to say, congratulations, you've reached milestone 1. This is what you should be expecting in terms of value. That can be automated. So make sure it's in their face and they know it and they see it. And if they haven't seen it, then they should be reaching back out to you. All right. That was a fast 20 minutes. Running through 3 key lessons that we're seeing in the world of buying behavior. As we saw, AI is driving new purchases. AI capabilities in existing products. A lot of the big winners are in sales and marketing tech, but also in engineering. That the buying process is getting harder. There's less access to minimum budgets because the short list has shrunk. Short lists are shrinking. Economic buyers are more involved at lower price points. And so you have to build the economic buyer into your go-to-market messaging, likely to CFO. And last but not least is how do you think about delivering time to value more quickly? So automating through product innovation, leveraging these onboarding type platforms to notify your customers when they've hit the milestones that are truly delivering ROI. That's what I had. Thank you very much.